Greetings. Hello, Colin. Colin, you are dressed as though you just come back from court.
Yeah. To be perfectly honest with you, half the people I'm dealing with, I'm pretty certain will end up there. I've started my new career as a cover teacher and I've been sent to a couple of high schools in the region. And to be fair, when you're cover, what schools have a tendency to do is take the real teachers and put them with the best kids. And then the other kids that they don't consider to be the best kids get the cover teachers. So you get to see the sort of like lower end. And being as that's where I mainly spent most of my school life is with that lot, I have certain sympathies and empathies with most of them. There are some of them which I feel a little bit beyond help, but most of them, once they actually realise that, you're from the street, man, they kind of, warm to you a little bit, which is all right. So, yeah, it's been okay. I've seen a lot of Minecraft being played during computer sciences. No, sorry. I've seen a lot of research into complex algorithms being played during computer science. But apart from that, it's been all right. Been cool.
Brilliant stuff. Yeah, I've had a fun day in classrooms today. Even though I wasn't actually teaching, I was just doing observing stuff, which is always kind of satisfying. Yeah.
Well, and nowadays, kind of a slight disturbing discourse, but I'm sure everything of it was said very innocently. Observing classrooms doesn't. At least you have qualifications for it, and you're not a pop star. That's all I can say.
Actually, one of my mentees said, when are you going to be watching us again and not in a pervy way? And it was just a case of, Jesus, I'm a walking safeguarding issue, I think, yeah.
He's not, genuinely. I'd like to state that right now. He genuinely isn't. All right. We may jest about such things because of that kind, because of the nature of the business, but genuinely not. Right. So Ash, with my disclaimer there.
Thank you for that. Yes.
You can do that kind of the whole, it's a Jimmy Savile joke. Other celebrities, entertainers have been arrested as well. What have we been reading this week?
What haven't we been reading? What have we been reading? We've been reading. I'm going to have to get the title right now, otherwise I'm going to look like a prick. Horror of the Heights. Is that the same title that you've got?
Yes, that's the one. Give me a synopsis, and I'll tell you if we read the same thing.
Horror of the Heights. Right, we've got a bloke who flies aeroplanes. He's probably got a name. Glossed over that part. It's just after the turn of the century, and when aeroplane flight is still relatively new. So the Wright brothers, I think, went up in about 1890 something, and so we're looking 1910s, 1920s, somewhere around there. And this pilot's getting very excited by the thought that he might be able to beat the height record of getting up to 40,000 feet, which I suppose, must have been something quite impressive during the day. He's a little bit anxious about getting up to 40,000 feet, though, because there are jungles in the air. And in these air jungles, there are creatures that live there that don't want to be disturbed. We get all of this from... His name's Joyce. That's who it is. It's Joyce, yes. Joyce gets up there, goes into the air, encounters some of these creatures, flies down, refills, drops a couple of pages from his diary, goes back up, and was never seen again.
Ooh, spooky.
Is that the one that you read?
Yeah, that's definitely the one that I read. Though as I was reading it, I wasn't sure. So there you go. But yes, that's definitely the one I read.
What did you think to it?
It's a bit more complicated. It's the most complicated one I've read so far into whether I enjoyed it or not. And I'm looking forward to the conversation to try and push my mind a certain way. I'll explain. The writing of it is exquisite. The actual craft involved in writing it is amazing, absolutely amazing. The level of detail in the aircraft and the flight and the feelings and emotions going through Joyce as he is going up in the aircraft was enough for me, to be perfectly honest with you. I thought that was wonderful. in the whole kind of beat Biggles into a cocked hat, to be perfectly honest with you, and that level of adventure going up in this aircraft, like I say, to 40,000 feet. And you're right, it was 20 years after the first flight, this is supposed to be. And he's talking about a monoplane. This is before World War II. This is pre-Spitfire days. So effectively, it's science fiction that you're reading.
Yeah.
And that I thought was fantastic. When it got up to the jungle, it felt, I don't know. And I think part of this is a modern eye. And I'm usually really good at putting myself back in a time, to kind of sort of like get on things. But it's Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wrote this. And am I right in saying, didn't he, I'm trying to remember, the Valley of Mawagi? Wasn't that Arthur Conan Doyle?
I shall ask my friend Google.
Yeah, have a look at that one. Because it started feeling a little bit like that, as in it didn't feel like here's a jungle above the clouds or you were getting up to this kind of thing. It just seemed to turn into this very strange...
Well, the Valley of Fear.
Eh?
Valley of Fear.
Valley of Fear? I can't remember what it is. I thought it was...
that's Sherlock Holmes one, sorry. That's Sherlock Holmes.
No, it's about little dinosaurs and...
The Lost World?
Lost World. No, it might be Lost World, actually. I might be thinking of a film version.
The Land of Mist.
It might be Lost World I'm thinking of. And I'm thinking of a film called The Valley of Mawagi, which is about little dinosaurs. And it's that Lost World feel, that idea that there's something that we haven't found yet. But because of its location... And because of the modern world, I found it very difficult to switch off my modern brain to buy into the jungle above the clouds thing.
Completely get that. I want to go back to what you were saying before about how it's science fiction, and that was exactly what I was thinking as I was going through it. It reminded me of The Martian by Andy Martian writer. He's probably got a surname. Who's also written one that's called something about... it's Andy Weir, and it's something about religion that Andy Weir. Project Hail Mary, yeah.
Aah and Col, look at Google.
Yeah. Project Hail Mary and The Martian, both by Andy Weir, and they've both got this very forward-looking way of approaching science fiction. So you've got an awful lot of detail that's there that's very, very sciencey and relevant. And I think that's what I was taking away from the start of that Conan Doyle story, that we were getting exactly what it's like to be inside a cockpit of a monoplane during the 1920s. We were getting all of the terminology, all of the excitement of flying. I just thought it worked as a realistic experience. The same as when you read The Martian, you get the realistic experience of going to the planet Mars, all credit to Andy Weir for the way he's written that one. Have you read that one, or have you just seen the film? Or?
I've only seen the film. I haven't read the book.
The film's fucking good. The book's even better because he throws that much science in there that it begins to bore you. So it's almost like, this is real science because, it's doing nothing for me. And it was the same in the cockpit. There were parts where you were thinking, just click the button, start it, and fly up there and find the fucking monsters. And I thought it was wonderfully rich in its detail. And I get what you're saying about the jungle. But I think for the first time I've read this one a couple of times, I was able to sort of like see past the ridiculousness of it. And the fact that you've got creatures that are basically like balloons and they're filled with some gas that makes them float. And I was thinking that, if they were like that, in that case, it could be that like creatures in the ocean, when they go up, we don't see the corpses of these things that have sort of like been right at the bottom of the ocean, do we? And it could be the same. We don't sort of like see the corpses of these things that are right at the top when they float down. They could dissolve or they could,
Yeah, I mean, the ideas behind it, this is what I say it's the most complicated one for me, because normally when something is a little bit out there and you don't get it, you see, it's very easy to just go, oh, it was shit. I mean, we've had that kind of discussion before. And with this one, I can't say that because it was the idea. I think it's that the problem with it is I loved the preposterous ideas. I loved the fact that he put the thought into how they stayed up. There was genuine thought into at a time when nobody knew. Nobody knew what was up there. We hadn't sent a balloon up that high. And I think he even mentions that in the story, because the aeronauts, as they were known back then, were just people went up in balloons as high as possible. And he was going for this record of being the going up the highest point. And so you can kind of understand that. And I'm pretty certain there was a certain amount of understanding little bits of atmosphere and how air is thinner up there as well, because that's kind of within the way that he talks about the way the aircraft works. And they know that when they went up in the air balloons, they know there were certain bits of the scientific knowledge that was certainly missing a little bit when he went into the jungle. But there were some ideas in that jungle that were just great. And it's kind of like, I don't know. I find it really difficult. It almost felt disconnected from the beginning by a large way. And you're talking about almost 2/3 of the story being this great detailed piece of mechanical writing that just talks about a piece of machinery so beautifully. And then you've got this other jungle that's written in this really kind of surrealistic way, and then, like you say, then he comes down, drops a bit of his diary, and goes off again, and never seen again. And it's kind of like, oh right, okay. It's almost like he sat there writing this boy's own adventure of an aircraft, and then getting to a certain height and going, oh, what do I find now? Like, do you know what I mean? It's almost like the jungle bit wasn't the idea when he started writing.
I completely get that. And I think, what we try and discuss here is where people get their inspiration from. And you can see that he's got his inspiration from here in, look, we're going into new worlds now. We're exploring the skies. Yes. What could be up there that's a potential threat or something that might make people wary about exploring them? I know, I'll put some gassy monsters up there. I'm making it sound like a shit story, and I don't. When I say gassy monsters, I don't mean.
No, it's far more clever than that. It's far more intelligent than that in the way that it goes on about them. I think it's a little bit, in a way, it's a little bit like what's happened to War of the Worlds with H.G. Wells, in that we now know that there are no Martians, right? Because we've now sent probes to Mars, and we haven't seen these green gases that he was talking about because of the time it was written and what we knew and the imagination that went on, to the point where someone actually attempted to write a sequel to War of the Worlds called The Massacre of Mankind, which was a bit rubbish. And that tried to move them to one of the moons. And then there's been another one where it kind of moves them to Venus. And it's like, the chances of anything coming from Mars was the point. Either own it or don't. And I think it's like this story. It's like he's done something because they didn't know. It's a bit like Jules Verne, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, It's that same idea that you're going down further than anyone's ever been, or you're going up further than anyone's ever been. And I like that. And I like the idea of exploring the thoughts. And I think that's where he was going with it, is, the idea of sitting there one day and looking up, when you get that top layer of cloud, which is almost just a whisper of cloud, and you can sit there and go, what's above that? Yeah. What's further than that? But I think the trouble with sky is there are times when you can see what's above that because you're observing stars and you're observing things. So you have to have in your head that this jungle's floating around on some sort of island in a way.
Yeah.
And then that's when it can start falling apart a little bit in the idea. And it's almost like if it hadn't have been so amazing in the detail in the first 2/3 of this story, then it might have connected with me a bit better, the surrealness. If it was the get in, push a button, hit start, boom, off we go, boy's own adventure in some sort of strange cloud jungle, you're buying into it, aren't you? But the thing is, you've already gone through, and actually, I'll tell you what, I've only just thought of this, but remember the old nurse's story?
Yeah.
We loved it, the end of it, the beginning of it a little bit dull. This is almost, not quite the reverse of it, but it is that whole, one of the problems with the old nurse's story was the uber realism of the beginning part of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem I'm having here. I think the uber realism of the first 2/3 of this, not boring, bloody brilliant, but in a way, it kind of spoils it when it goes outside that uber realism.
That's a frustrating thing to hear, because one of the things that I like to do in my writing is have sort of like levels of realism, and I like to sort of like balance the realism against the supernatural and the unrealism, as it were. So if that's something that's off-putting to readers, in that case, I'm really fucking it over big time.
I don't know if it actually puts me off things. I think there's a level that you've got to look at. I think you've got to take people on a ride when you're doing that kind of thing. If you look at the works of Clive Barker, for example, he has wonderful prose going on, but there's still a lot of realism in the way that things are going on. But when it starts going strange, it starts small and then progressively gets into a much stranger world. Where the trouble is, what he was doing is it's almost like that turning the corner and seeing a valley full of dinosaurs. It's this explosion of surrealism on the back of the uber realistic type of stuff that I don't know. And this is why I find it complicated. I don't know if he was successful in creating that bit where you go over the what we call like the Wizard of Oz moment when you open the door and it's color instead of black and white, or the Alice in Wonderland where you go through the door and you get the strange plants and you go into that other world. There's always this middle bit where it kind of crosses over, where it gives you just a moment to reset your brain into where you're going. And I think that's fine, but I don't think he's successful at doing that in this story.
Yeah, I get what you mean. It's like there's a bridge there that's not been as properly executed as it could be.
Yes.
And I fully agree with you. I think, that's very, very valid criticism for the story. I enjoyed the story. It's Conan Doyle, and the guy just wrote beautifully.
Yes.
But maybe my issue with it is the fact that I'm also listening to all of the Sherlock Holmes stories at the moment, and you go from those with their rationality to this with its irrationality, and it's a huge jump, especially when the first 2/3 of the story are incredibly rational and detailed. And if it wasn't for Conan Doyle's prose, it would have been a dull read.
Yes.
Because it's just somebody basically starting an engine and taking it up for a quick fly around, which, would have been dull. That whole bridge part, it doesn't seem to work. It's like that illustration that you can see on Facebook where it sort of like shows you the beautifully drawn picture of the horse at the start.
Yes.
And by the time you get to the end, it's a kid's drawing.
Yes, which I've seen used for two examples. One which was, this is what you get out of an artist depending on how much you pay them. So full price down to $5. And the other one was Matrix movies, as in the first Matrix movie down to the fourth Matrix movie.
I saw it used for Game of Thrones from season 1 through to season 8.
And it works for all of them. But the bridge, it's an interesting thing, that, isn't it? Because we've not really discussed that as a mechanism. When you're going from one world to another, or you're going from one concept, realism, into a surrealistic concept or a supernatural concept, that creating that bridge is so important in the reader's mind, to be able to just allow them that time to readjust as you're going into all that strangeness.
I think it's sort of like giving support to the suspension of disbelief, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, and we need something like that. So to take it to the example of, I was watching one of the pitch meetings the other day where he was discussing Nightmare on Elm Street. And if you remember, the first Nightmare on Elm Street, we're introduced to Freddy's nightmare presence when there's that girl's asleep and then Freddy's head appears from the wall over the top of her. And they were sort of like saying, who's that there for? I mean, is that still in the dream? In that case, is she dreaming about herself in bed with that going over the top? Or is he really able to do that, which means he's able to control reality? And the reality of it is that's being done just for us, so that we've got a better understanding that this is a spooky monster that's coming out of the dreams.
Yes.
And which is why the Freddy Krueger things still work today. You watch them and they're still an unsettling horror movie. They've got sort of like a wonderful feel to them.
And you're absolutely right. And actually, it's something that Wes Craven does very successfully. Hang on. something that Wes Craven does very successfully, because you see it in the Scream films as well, where he just creates the way that first of all you set up the rules of the universe you are in, and then you start to subvert those rules very subtly, and then you just start signposting what kind of film you're watching. And Wes Craven does it really quickly. He's very, very good at getting those signposts in very quickly, so that you can settle back and really enjoy it.
Yeah, and I think audiences need that structure. And I suppose that's where this story is lacking. We've sort of like got the realism of the structure of this is what flight is, because we live in a world where flight now exists. And when we can go up to the heights of 40,000 feet, and then it's a case of, and whilst we're up there, there's a jungle that you can't see from the earth that's full of these gas creatures which dissolve if they ever fall down.
Yeah.
And that bridge didn't have that structure to make the unbelievable believable.
That's it in a nutshell. That's why I was struggling with it. I think it's because it's a bit like when you get a nice meal and all the ingredients are fantastic, but it's just not working for you.
Yeah,
it's like that, because you cannot. I'd say to anyone, if you are writing something, and I'd even say this story as well, to be perfectly honest with you, if you are writing something where you have to describe, if you are writing something about a driver who's driving a car, or this whole idea of the airplane, and you want to be immersive with it, if you want your reader to go into that kind of level, this is what it's all about. And this is exactly how you do that. And I know it's not a particular favorite of yours, but Bret Easton Ellis does this with like 80s culture and that whole kind of culture, which wouldn't be great. If you buy into it, it's great. If you're not into it, it's really dull and boring, because it's uber realism in the way that it's done. I'm reading one at the moment called The Forensic Record Club, where these guys just get a room at the back of a pub and all they do is sit and listen to records. And there are certain parts of that which are, honestly, you're reading this thing and it's just dull, but it's brilliant because it is just this dull life, and it gets more exciting. It's a little bit like poetry societies. If you wrote a book about poetry societies, there are these lovely little characters, but if you're doing a book about poetry societies, you would need to get the details right, because that's what sells it. And so that's what it is to me, is if this was a story that actually ended up with him just flying very high and maybe hallucinating a little bit, feeling a little bit odd and crashing back down to earth again, or disappearing because he went too high and his plane came crashing back down, and that's why he was never seen again, and you found that would have sat easier.
Yeah, completely get that. Yeah, because it did. I'm not going to say it came out of left field, because the setup was absolutely fine. But sort of like it's a framed narration with somebody looking at the journal that's been found that belonged to Joyce, and so we've got a nice framed narration part. And we're already told at the start that he's either missing or dead. We don't know which, and it's something to do with his flying. So we've got that whole narrative suspension that's taking us up there, that, something is going to happen. But I think more could have been done to prepare us for the fact that he was encountering sort of like fat Pokemon, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, a little drawing would have been good, in his journal. I mean, you really could have done it that way. You could have, because it still would have worked if it had a description of an unbelievable creature at the beginning, and going, we don't know what's happened on this flight. This is what we found about this, and this seems, and then you go into, because we've seen that before, haven't we? A bit like The Door in the Wall, where he's doing the, I'm going to tell you this story. I'm going to tell you something I've never told anyone before. And with the mezzotint, this guy told me a story, and you get a certain amount of lead up. You get a certain amount of what the mystery is at the beginning, and it's like, I think we were talking the other week, weren't we, about what makes a mystery story and the rules. And there's that, that fella that's done the 20 rules that must be broken.
SS Van Dyne.
But it's absolutely right in some of it, in that if you are going a certain way out, then foregrounding it very early on in what is coming, I think, is important. You need to know, even if it's in the title, even if it's in, it's almost like the spoilers, isn't it? It's like people actually like trailers that give away part of the story because they don't like things to be completely blank to them.
So does this mean that you and I depend a lot on structure for our entertainment? Do we enjoy the formulaic rather than something that sort of like rebels against the formulaic?
I don't know, really. I mean, I've seen plenty of stuff and read plenty of stuff that goes against the grain and goes against the formula. I think in this case, it's more a question of like we were talking about before, the bridge hasn't been done right.
Yeah,
that's what I think it is. I think we all have certain cues that we need. I don't think it's necessarily a formula as such. I think there are just certain things that we need. A bit like my bugbear with modern detective stories where the police don't solve anything. You spend so long bimbling around the place just for someone at the end to suddenly go, "Oh no, it was me actually." So
what's going to happen at the end of this? Stay close.
Yes.
Brilliant. Yeah, because it's fucking hard work watching it. I'm so pleased my son's over here at the moment because I'm not able to pick up on it until he's gone back. So I'm getting a couple of days respite from it.
Told you, I did tell you.
Yeah, and I mean, I know Tracy's going to make me watch the end of it anyway because once she gets her teeth into something, she has to see through to the end. I'm the sort that can sort of like, do you know what? I've watched 3 hours of this fucking Hobbit film. I'm not watching the final 10 minutes of it. And I can happily
that one. You've got a chance. I think the problem with that Stay Close is I had to watch it to the end because it had so much shithousery going on. You're thinking, surely this must mean something. And that's and I've got to say, I think that is exactly where we are with this story. And I will say, Stay Close. Be warned. It's not going to be full spoilers on this one, but it certainly will be if you enjoyed Stay Close and I turn around and say it was rubbish. And it was rubbish for very specific reasons. Oh.
You saying hello to Cole?
Oh, hello, Oswald. Look at that. You see, he knows who I am. Hello, Oswald. Yeah, the trouble is in that writing of, when you are writing stuff that is strange, it is not enough for it to just be strange.
It needs to be logically happening within it, yeah.
Has to happen with it. Even if that's within its own universe, it still has to have rules. And when you read things like Dune, and even Lord of the Rings, and I know we both have a disdain for that book. I prefer the films. I know you have a disdain for it all. But the whole thing is, it did at least establish a universe. It established
absolutely,
its rules, and it sat within those rules. And it's okay to come out of those rules. Like you say, you've got Alice in Wonderland. That's what I did with Mathemagical. When I wrote Mathemagical, you are moving from one to the other, quite often known as portal stories. Lost World, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Lost World does that, where it moves from reality and and that one, you have the journey, don't you? You have that wonderful journey where things are starting to get stranger and stranger until they find the dinosaurs. And so, it's that level of journey that's going on. And I think maybe it's the format he's chosen to do this as a short story. Maybe that's what's done the whole thing. He didn't have enough room to breathe in the last bit. Maybe because he was thinking it was where it was going to be published. It had the constraints of a number of words.
Yeah, I can see all of those things sort of like, helping to support. And I'm not going to overly criticise it. He says, after we've been 40 minutes into criticise, I'm not going to overly criticise the damn thing. Because it was really well written. It's just that disjoint between the start of the story and that clumsy ending. Is it fair to say clumsy?
Oh,
yeah, I think it is.
I'm not even going to say clumsy. See, when we had the Signal Man,
yeah,
and we were frustrated by the Signal Man because the descriptions were absolutely amazing, but the characterizations were very poorly realized, and it left you feeling a little bit empty. And when we read Wake Not the Dead, again, we were a little bit annoyed at the way that it was just so poorly conceived in places that it did make it really sort of difficult. I got to separate this because I actually found the bit in the jungle and the floaty animals, and I actually found that enjoyable to read. It was very well written. It was really, really good. And I'm going to go back to Stay Close, because there's two characters in Stay Close, those tap dancing Gilbert and Sullivan.
Assassins,
right?
Yeah.
In something like A Dirk Gently...
Yep.
in something like a Dirk Gently novel or a Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency TV series, those characters would have been fantastic. They would have been brilliant. You don't need to know any of their history. They're just an odd, quirky character that turns up. But when you place them in the universe that Stay Close was trying to make us believe in, they were just too odd. They were too strange to exist within that universe without anybody noticing them.
Yeah, fully understand. Yeah.
And so, but they were really good as characters, and I see that as it. The whole bit in the jungle with the floaties, Floatimon. There we go. We'll call them the Floatimons, right?
Yes.
You got to pop them all. So with the Floatimons was great. I mean, it was really, really good. It was very well written. You still had that sense of wonder. You still got a really good sense of what the character was thinking and feeling in the way that the diary was written. And I know that it's set up that bits of the diary are missing. So I suppose you're supposed to be thinking, well, the bit where he goes from one to the other in not so jaunty a way, that maybe that's the bit that's missing from the visiting pages. But yeah, but they felt like two very separate entities to me, and that's where the problem came in. They were both extremely well written, and they were both very well realized, but they didn't feel like they went together.
I get. Completely.
That's why it's complicated, because it's really good. But
yeah, I mean, the science fiction element of it was just so entertaining. It was just well constructed, and it was hard science fiction as well, wasn't it? So it was work. I mean, hard science fiction in retrospect is just so historically so much fun, but yeah, it left me slightly dissatisfied. Yeah.
That's the and that's going to be the worst I'm going to say about it. The taking apart of it is to try and find those creative ideas and try and find the areas where we can not make those particular types of mistakes, which are better for the reader. Because, say, as a worker, like say, retrospective science fiction, you're reading something that is over 100 years old, where it's talking about a technology that we've had for 100 years.
Yeah.
But it's new to them. and it's complete science fiction to them. What he was writing about back in 1914, which I think he was 1913, 1914 when this came out, it was like, wow, that must have been quite an incredible read for the majority of it. And maybe back then, the sudden opening of the world. And this is why I think part of my problem with this bridge is a modern mind. Yeah. That's where I think part of the problem is. I don't think it's all Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's thing. I think he wrote for a Victorian schemata.
Yes.
And by the time he's got up to 40,000 feet, he's already broken that. He's already gone into weird territory with the shaking wings. And he's already taken them to a world that most people hadn't been, which is up in the air. Nowadays, most people have flown somewhere. So it is very, very difficult to strip away this concept of being on a plane and what being on a plane and flight feels like to everyone who's ever been on a plane. And so I think that might be that's why I think it's more complicated, because it's the first time I think my modern brain has not been able to put myself back in that time, because it's asking me to undo stuff that I know, almost like a boring level. Because you get on a plane now, and it's not, apart from my son's dead excited about it because he loves planes, but you kind of get on, they shake around a bit, you eat some crap food, and then they land, and you turn up somewhere else. They're almost like buses. But back then, it must have been an incredible thing, the idea of flying. I bet so many people wouldn't want to go on them because it was unnatural.
Yeah, almost certainly. And I think perhaps that's where he was playing on the unnaturalness. And the reason why it's unnatural is because we're expecting something unnatural to be there up in the skies. Sorry, I can't move much because fat dog. On a side note,
I'm glad you actually put the camera down before, so we know that it is genuinely a fat dog.
Yeah.
Because I must admit, that did look a bit G, didn't it? Like a fat dog.
Fat dog went to the vets today because of his claws, right? Yeah, this is completely off topic. And went to the vets today because of his nails, because he refuses to have his nails cut. You try doing it and he goes fucking stupid. So Tracy took him up to the vets, and the vet said, well, we can get him in, we can sort of like sedate him to that. He said, but do you want me to take a shot at it now? Because we've got a nurse here who's very good at holding dogs and they can do it. And she said, yeah, go for it. So came back 10 minutes later. Oswald had bitten him, pissed on him and shat on him. And still had all his nails intact. Yeah.
But he had a lot of experience. He's got more experience now.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes.
No.
So this is why I'm comforting the dog tonight, just because. Because you don't fuck around with somebody who bites you, shits on you, and pisses on you.
Yeah, he's still ready for it. He's still ready for anyone. Come on, come at me.
Yeah. Right. So what are we reading next week?
Well, right, this is going to excite at least 3 people, and 2 of them are on screen.
Brilliant.
Okay, next week we are going to be reading The Casting of the Runes by M.R. James. Mr.
Ooh.
James. We did the Mezzotint. I mentioned it tonight, actually.
Yep.
Master of the horror short story. It is the influence behind one of my favourite horror films, and we will discuss that next week. But what's more exciting is this particular story has been chosen just by Sean Wilson. He's coming back.
Is Sean going to be doing the summary?
Well, yes. I'm going to make him, because he has chosen this one. He had a little bit of help. He had about 3 that he wanted to do, and I kind of poked him in that direction to go for the casting of the runes, right? So he's really up for that. So last time we chose the one, and he came along to have a read, but he enjoyed it so much. And a bit like this tonight, I think I'm getting a little bit more settled in my head with the story now, in that complicated thing. And now I've thought about, that's where the unnaturalness came in, and I just wasn't able to see it because of my modern brain. I think that's where it's sitting for me now. And he liked that. He liked the idea that you do change your mind when you actually sit down to discuss things on a regular basis. So he's coming back, and I think that's fantastic. So he's our first returning guest. He's going to be.
Can't wait. So that's The Casting of the Rooms by M.R. James.
Yes.
And
So that's
same bad time, same bad channel. So
just to recap on this one, I think now with even more deep thought about it, it is less problematic than I was originally thinking. And I go back to the first thing I said right at the beginning. I think it was the modern brain that was stopping me having that. And I think that is such a big problem sometimes when reading the old texts. And I think we had that same thing, didn't we, with the Ice Habit when Sean was on last time?
Yeah.
Placing yourself back in history to be able to understand what's being written is very important. And I think normally I can do it, but on this one, I think it was just one of those things that I was unable to really capture in my head. So it's me. It's all about me and not Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, this one.
Still one of my favourites.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was awesome, mate. That was brilliant. If anybody's still listening, please hit like, hit subscribe, hit anybody. Yeah,
hit anything. Not anybody. Just go out and hit anything.
Yeah.
And then and also put suggestions in the comments, please. and anything in the comments. Really, we don't care. Bad words, good words, we really don't mind anything. So
no such thing as bad words. Yeah,
no, there is only words.
There's only bad speakers. Yes.
So anyway, that will wrap that up. Do give it a read, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Yeah. Then.